priest of Israel. Here's the Hebrew priest of Israel wearing a mushroom on his head. The mushroom headdress. I've often wondered, see, because the mushrooms were a hallucinogenic drug. And I've often wondered, is that why they call the priest high priest?
I'm only addressing this one because I've actually received emails from people telling me that this is where the Hebrew term, the high priest, came from. Even Maxwell seems to know that this is an impossibility and is only using it as a bad joke. Because the term high priest, you must first realize, is an English slang term, the word high. In Hebrew, the word for high priest was gadol, which means great or large in number, intensity, loud, older, importance, that kind of thing. As far as their hats, kind of, sort of, maybe looking like mushrooms, I'm just not even going to address that.
Here in the catacombs of Rome, under the Vatican, you will find paintings in the old catacombs of the Amanita muscara being the sacred tree.
Maxwell is wrong on quite a lot here. It's nowhere near the Vatican, it's nowhere near Rome, and it's not in a catacomb. It's actually in an abbey in Plaincaron, France. And I know what he's trying to say is trying to show any kind of art in ancient history and saying it's proof of Christianity starting from a mushroom cult. When showing an artist representation from the 12th century about Adam and Eve, which is something, a very common motif for artists being commissioned back then anyway, and artists probably do a lot of shrooms, what does that prove? And even if you found it in the Vatican itself, if you found it underneath the Vatican, what would that prove? I mean, we've shown time and time again that all the Vatican is a continuation of the Roman religion. They turned their mini pantheon of gods into the saints, and they turned their top goddess into Mary. But the common enemy of Rome and the hybrid Christian/pagan Catholic Church was always real Christians. People that really believed in the Bible and really believed in Jesus Christ. Those people were the enemy of both Rome and the Catholic Church.
Of knowledge of good and evil. Well, the whole concept is if you take the mushroom, it opens up your mind to all kinds of off-the-wall things. Of course you can talk to God. Incidentally, if you take north, east, west, and south, that spells news.
On the one hand, he is right. If you take those letters in that order, it does spell news. But it is the most illogical order for those letters. Why not choose north, east, south, west, or north, west, south, east, or even north, south, east, west, but instead north, east, west, south? Not to mention that this theory also presumes that the ancient and root words for north and east and south and west were all anticipating an English language to one day use an acronym for the word news. That is stupid.
Words mean. Yahweh is not the name of God. Yahweh in Hebrew is an expressive term. It's expressing something. It's describing something. It's not a formal name of God. Yahweh in Hebrew simply means, and the best way to explain what the word means is to take a garden hose and hold the end of it, turn on the water, and you feel the pressure building up. When you release the hose, it's a release of pressure. It's a release of energy. In the Hebrew, in the ancient Hebrew, the release of dynamic energy was called Yahweh. And it was always associated with sex. It's the building up of the sexual urge, and the releasing of sex in the sex act was referred to in the ancient Phoenician Canaanite system as being one with Yahweh.
This is a series of huge lies from Jordan Maxwell. I encourage anyone to go try and research that in ancient Hebrew the release of dynamic energy was called Yahweh, and that it was always associated with sex. There's a lot of debate on the meaning of Yahweh, but those debates come to no conclusion anything like Maxwell's. In ancient Hebrew, the word Yahweh, also referred to as the tetragrammaton, can mean many things. Meanings like he that hath sent me, he who is always the same, he who is absolutely truly existent, he has, he is, he will be. Some suggest I am the one I am, or I am whatever I need to become. Maxwell's definition, although it comes directly from Blavatsky, stems from the idea that Yahweh could have come from the proper name of the Phoenician Canaanite god Yam. It was at this point that Madame Blavatsky writes in her book, The Theosophical Glossary, the meaning that Jordan Maxwell will one day use to say what he just said. Although he adds quite a bit in his definition in order to fit with his previous theory that anoint means to anoint with sexual fluid in the hopes of trying to paint the picture of Jesus Christ being anointed with semen. Keep in mind what Blavatsky is saying here offers no sources or previous support of any kind, not to mention that no matter which way you look at it, this word Yao is not ancient by any stretch of the imagination. Even Blavatsky says it was derived from Greek and could be considered Neoplatonist. That's well after the time of Christ. Maxwell is wrong on several levels here. I'd like to point out that Wikipedia makes a good point when it says, in its earlier form, this opinion rested chiefly on certain misinterpreted testimonies in Greek authors about a god, Lao, and this was conclusively refuted by Baudissin. Recent adherents of this theory build more largely on the occurrence in various parts of the territory of proper names of persons and places. Okay, now I'd like to point out this is exactly what Maxwell says at the beginning of the clip that Yahweh is not, and that is based on a proper name. He says it's a concept. Again, he's referring to the Kabbalah Gnostic, but this is much later, and it's not even close to his actual definition. It's important to realize that the Canaanite god's name was Yam, not Yao. Again, I encourage you guys to go out there and try to find any record that the ancient Hebrew people's word for the release of dynamic sexual energy was Yahweh. Good luck. As you may have guessed by now, Jordan Maxwell is not this man's real name. And I don't have any kind of problem with that. Using a pseudonym is a perfectly reasonable and understandable practice. But there is something a little fishy with the name that Jordan Maxwell chose. Here's why. In Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky's book, Isis Unveiled, Volume 2, Theology, she tells us what her version of the Nazarene Trinity is. And she tells us that the second in the Trinity is Jordanus Maximus. It is said that Jordanus Maximus, the water of life, he is the one through whom we alone can be saved. Now, on Jordan Maxwell's website, there's a section where it just lists a bunch of words that Jordan Maxwell is encouraging people to just do their homework on. Apparently because he's just so good with words. And one of those words is Jordanus Maximus, and it has some question marks to the side of it. And then it's the only word that has a little addendum to the right. That addendum says, this term was brought to Jordan's attention in an email he received from a rabbi. We thought we'd just throw this one in. This clearly implies that Jordan is claiming not to have any knowledge of the term Jordanus Maximus, at least up until he could get emails from rabbis. And considering emails are pretty late and his career has been pretty long, this is saying that he had no idea up until pretty recently of this term Jordanus Maximus.